The judge's gavel slammed down, silencing the courtroom. I find the defendant, Amara Johnson, guilty of resisting arrest and assaulting a police officer. Amara's heart sank as the words echoed through the room. How could this be happening? She had done nothing wrong, yet the system had turned against her. Amara, a 17-year-old black activist, had been arrested at a peaceful protest, tackled to the ground by overzealous officers. Now, she stood accused of crimes she never committed, facing the prospect of juvenile detention. As the judge droned on with the sentencing, Amara's eyes locked with her mother's in the gallery, both of them fighting back tears of frustration and disbelief. But then, just as the judge was about to pronounce the final verdict, a commotion erupted at the back of the courtroom. A young man in a suit pushed his way through the crowd, waving a document. "Your Honor, I have new evidence that completely exonerates the defendant." The judge paused, eyeing the interruption with annoyance. "Who are you, and what is the meaning of this disruption?" The man hurried to the front, breathless but determined. "My name is Ethan Blackwell, and I'm a legal intern at the ACLU. We've uncovered video footage that shows the police officers used excessive force and fabricated their report." He handed the judge a USB drive. "If you review this evidence, you'll see Amara was completely justified in her actions." Amara watched, stunned, as the judge reluctantly inserted the drive and began watching the footage. The courtroom fell silent, all eyes fixed on the screen. Amara held her breath, praying this would finally prove her innocence. The video showed the protest unfolding peacefully, with Amara leading chants and marching alongside her fellow activists. Suddenly, a line of police in riot gear advanced, pushing the crowd back. Amara could be seen pleading with the officers, her hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. But then, without warning, two burly officers grabbed Amara, slamming her to the ground. She struggled to break free, her cries of, "I'm not resisting," drowned out by the chaos. The footage clearly showed the officers twisting Amara's arms and kneeing her in the back as she lay prone on the pavement. As the video ended, the courtroom erupted in murmurs of shock and outrage. Amara's mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. The judge stared at the screen, his brow furrowed in a mix of disbelief and consternation. "This is highly disturbing," the judge said, his voice heavy with gravity. "It appears the police officers in question grossly misrepresented the events in their report." He turned to Amara, his expression softening. "Young lady, I want to apologize for the injustice you have endured. It's clear you were the victim here, not the perpetrator." The video showed the protest unfolding peacefully, with Amara leading chants and marching alongside her fellow activists. Suddenly, a line of police in riot gear advanced, pushing the crowd back. Amara could be seen pleading with the officers, her hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. But then, without warning, two burly officers grabbed Amara, slamming her to the ground. She struggled to break free, her cries of, "I'm not resisting," drowned out by the chaos. The footage clearly showed the officers twisting Amara's arms and kneeing her in the back as she lay prone on the pavement. As the video ended, the courtroom erupted in murmurs of shock and outrage. Amara's mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. The judge stared at the screen, his brow furrowed in a mix of disbelief and consternation. "This is highly disturbing," the judge said, his voice heavy with gravity. "It appears the police officers in question grossly misrepresented the events in their report." He turned to Amara, his expression softening. "Young lady, I want to apologize for the injustice you have endured. It's clear you were the victim here, not the perpetrator." Amara felt a surge of relief, but also a lingering sense of anger. "Your Honor, with all due respect, this isn't the first time the system has failed people like me. Black and brown youth are constantly targeted and criminalized, even when we're peacefully exercising our rights." The judge nodded solemnly. "You make a fair point. This case has exposed deep-seated biases and flaws within our justice system that we must address." He turned to the prosecutor. "I'm dismissing all charges against the defendant. Furthermore, I'm ordering an immediate investigation into the conduct of the officers involved." As Amara left the courtroom, she was surrounded by a throng of reporters, all clamoring for a statement. She held up her hand, silencing the din. "This isn't about me, it's about the countless others who don't have the privilege of having their stories heard. The system is broken, and it's time for real, meaningful change." Ethan, the ACLU intern, approached Amara, a look of admiration on his face. "You were incredible in there. I'm honored to have played a small part in exposing the truth." Amara smiled, shaking his hand. "Thank you, Ethan, but the real work is just beginning. We need to keep fighting, to keep pushing for justice and accountability. This is only the start." The judge's gavel slammed down once more, signaling the end of the proceedings. Amara took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the faces in the courtroom. She saw a mix of emotions: relief, anger, determination. This was a victory, but it was also a reminder of the long road ahead. As Amara exited the courthouse, she couldn't help but feel a sense of both triumph and trepidation. The system had failed her, but she had fought back and won. Now she knew the real battle was just beginning. "This is highly disturbing," the judge said, his voice heavy with gravity. "It appears the police officers in question grossly misrepresented the events in their report." He turned to Amara, his expression softening. "Young lady, I want to apologize for the injustice you have endured. It's clear you were the victim here, not the perpetrator." Amara felt a surge of relief, but also a lingering sense of anger. "Your Honor, with all due respect, this isn't the first time the system has failed people like me. Black and brown youth are constantly targeted and criminalized, even when we're peacefully exercising our rights." The judge nodded solemnly. "You make a fair point. This case has exposed deep-seated biases and flaws within our justice system that we must address." He turned to the prosecutor. "I'm dismissing all charges against the defendant. Furthermore, I'm ordering an immediate investigation into the conduct of the officers involved." Amara's mother, who had been sitting quietly in the gallery, rose to her feet, her eyes shining with tears of joy and pride. "Thank you, Your Honor. My daughter has been through so much, but she's always stood up for what's right. I'm grateful the truth has finally come to light." The prosecutor, a middle-aged white man, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Your Honor, I must object. The officers involved are respected members of the force, and their testimony should be given equal weight." The judge fixed the prosecutor with a stern gaze. "I'm well aware of the tendency to automatically trust the word of law enforcement, even in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. That mentality is precisely what has allowed systemic racism to persist in our justice system." He turned his attention back to Amara. "Young lady, I commend you for your courage and conviction. You have shown remarkable poise and maturity in the face of adversity. I hope this experience will not deter you from continuing to fight for the rights and dignity of your community." Amara nodded, her expression resolute. "I won't be silenced, Your Honor. This is just the beginning. As long as there are young people like me who are willing to stand up and speak out, the fight for true justice will never end." The prosecutor scoffed, his face flushed with frustration. "This is outrageous. You're setting a dangerous precedent by dismissing the charges against the defendant. What message does this send to the officers who put their lives on the line to protect our streets?" The judge held up a hand, silencing the prosecutor. "The message it sends is that we will not tolerate the abuse of power, nor the targeting of marginalized communities. If the officers in question truly believed they were acting in the best interests of public safety, they would have no reason to fabricate their report." He turned to Ethan, the ACLU intern, who had presented the exculpatory evidence. "Mr. Blackwell, I commend you and your organization for your diligence in uncovering the truth. Your actions have played a crucial role in exposing the flaws in this case." Ethan nodded, his expression solemn. "Thank you, Your Honor. The ACLU is committed to fighting for the rights of all people, regardless of their race, socioeconomic status, or background. We will continue to hold the justice system accountable and ensure that no one is unjustly targeted or criminalized." Amara watched the exchange, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions. She was grateful for the judge's willingness to acknowledge the systemic issues at play, and for the support of the ACLU. But she also knew that this was just one battle in a much larger war. As the courtroom began to clear, Amara approached the prosecutor, her expression calm but resolute. "Sir, I hope you'll take this opportunity to reflect on your own biases and the role you've played in perpetuating an unjust system. True justice can only be achieved when we all commit to dismantling the structures that have oppressed and marginalized people like me for far too long." The prosecutor averted his gaze, his jaw clenched. Amara knew her words had struck a chord, even if he wasn't ready to admit it. She turned and walked out of the courtroom, her head held high, determined to continue the fight for a more equitable and just society. As Amara left the courtroom, she was surrounded by a throng of reporters, all clamoring for a statement. She held up her hand, silencing the din. "This isn't about me. It's about the countless others who don't have the privilege of having their stories heard. The system is broken, and it's time for real, meaningful change." Ethan, the ACLU intern, approached Amara, a look of admiration on his face. "You were incredible in there. I'm honored to have played a small part in exposing the truth." Amara smiled, shaking his hand. "Thank you, Ethan, but the real work is just beginning. We need to keep fighting, to keep pushing for justice and accountability. This is only the start." The reporters bombarded Amara with questions, their microphones and cameras thrust in her face. "How does it feel to have the charges against you dismissed? What message do you hope this sends to the police department? Do you plan to take legal action against the officers involved? Amara took a deep breath, her gaze steady and unwavering. I'm grateful that the truth has finally come to light, but this isn't a personal victory. It's a victory for all the young people of color who have been unjustly targeted and criminalized by a system that is supposed to protect us. She paused, her eyes scanning the faces of the reporters. The officers involved in my arrest need to be held accountable for their actions. Their fabricated report and use of excessive force is a clear violation of my civil rights, and it's indicative of a much larger problem within law enforcement. Amara's mother, who had been standing by her side, placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Amara has always been a voice for the voiceless. She's been fighting for justice and equality since she was a child, and this is just the latest chapter in her ongoing struggle. The reporters scribbled furiously, their pens dancing across their notepads. So, what's next for you, Amara? Are you planning to continue your activism, or will you focus on your own legal case? Amara straightened her shoulders, her expression resolute. I'm not going anywhere. This is just the beginning. I'm going to keep fighting, keep speaking out, and keep pushing for real, systemic change, because until we address the deep-seated biases and inequities that plague our justice system, stories like mine will continue to happen. She turned to Ethan, her gaze filled with purpose. Ethan, I want to thank you and the ACLU for your tireless work in uncovering the truth. But we can't stop here. We need to use this momentum to drive real, lasting change. Ethan nodded, his own determination mirroring Amara's. Absolutely. The ACLU is committed to supporting your efforts. Amara will be by your side every step of the way, using the full force of our legal expertise and resources to fight for justice. The reporters continued to barrage the pair with questions, but Amara and Ethan remained steadfast in their responses. They spoke of the need for police reform, the importance of community-based solutions, and the critical role that young activists like Amara play in driving social change. That's the press conference drew to a close. Amara turned to the cameras one last time. This isn't about me. It's about all the young people who have been silenced, marginalized, and denied their basic rights. It's about creating a more just, equitable, and compassionate society for everyone, regardless of their race, status, or background. She paused, her gaze unwavering. We can't afford to be complacent. We can't afford to let the system continue to fail us. It's time to stand up, speak out, and demand the change we deserve. Because if we don't, who will? The reporters erupted in a flurry of applause, their cameras flashing as Amara and Ethan made their way through the crowd. Amara's mother beamed with pride, her eyes shining with tears of joy and hope as they walked away from the courthouse. Amara felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight was far from over, but she knew that with the support of the ACLU and the growing movement for social justice, she had the power to make a real, lasting difference. In the days and weeks that followed, Amara's story gained national attention, sparking a wave of protests and renewed calls for police accountability and reform. Her powerful testimony and the video evidence that exonerated her became a rallying cry for the Black Lives Matter movement, amplifying the urgent need to address systemic racism within the criminal justice system. Amara found herself thrust into the national spotlight, her face and name becoming synonymous with the fight for racial equity. She embraced this platform, using it to elevate the voices of other young activists and to demand concrete policy changes from local and federal lawmakers. Alongside the ACLU and a growing coalition of civil rights organizations, Amara spearheaded a series of high-profile legal challenges targeting the use of excessive force, racial profiling, and unjust prosecution tactics by law enforcement. She testified before congressional committees, participated in town halls, and organized large-scale demonstrations, her unwavering determination and eloquence inspiring thousands of supporters across the country. This isn't about me anymore, Amara declared in an interview. It's about creating a future where no one has to endure what I went through, where young people of color can exercise their rights without fear of being criminalized or brutalized by the very systems that are supposed to protect them. Her words resonated powerfully, galvanizing a new generation of activists and allies to join the fight. Amara's story became a touchstone for the broader movement, a powerful symbol of the resilience, courage, and moral clarity required to dismantle the entrenched inequities that had long plagued the American justice system. As the momentum built, Amara found herself at the forefront of a sweeping legislative push for police reform. Working closely with lawmakers and community leaders, she helped craft a comprehensive set of policy proposals aimed at increasing transparency, accountability, and community-based oversight of law enforcement. The Amara Johnson Act, as it came to be known, called for mandatory body cameras, the establishment of independent civilian review boards, and the demilitarization of police departments, among other key reforms. It quickly gained bipartisan support, with politicians from across the ideological spectrum recognizing the urgent need for change. Amara's unwavering advocacy and the groundswell of public support proved instrumental in the bill's passage, marking a significant victory in the ongoing struggle for racial justice. As the legislation was signed into law, Amara stood beside the president, her face beaming with a mixture of pride and determination. "This is just the beginning," she declared in her remarks. "We've taken an important step forward, but there is still so much work to be done. We must continue to push, to organize, to demand accountability and real, systemic change. Because until every person in this country can feel safe, respected, and truly equal under the law, our work is not done." The crowd erupted in thunderous applause, recognizing Amara's pivotal role in this historic moment. In the days and weeks that followed, her name and image became synonymous with the fight for a more just and equitable society, inspiring a new generation of young activists to take up the mantle of social change. Amara's journey, from a wrongfully accused teenager to a nationally recognized civil rights leader, had been a long and arduous one. But through it all, she had remained steadfast in her commitment to justice, her unwavering spirit and moral clarity guiding her every step of the way. As she looked out over the sea of faces, both familiar and new, Amara knew that the road ahead would be challenging, filled with setbacks and obstacles. But she also knew that she was not alone, that she was part of a growing movement of people who were willing to stand up, speak out, and fight for the change they believed in. And with that knowledge, Amara felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. She would continue to be a voice for the voiceless, a beacon of hope for those who had been marginalized and oppressed. And she would never stop fighting, never stop pushing, until true justice and equality were realized for all.